As you already know, January 19, there was a WEF meeting in Switzerland, Davos. And this meeting was different than any other meeting. And the reason why is because there was, in my view, a Trojan horse in that meeting. And the Trojan horse is a compliment I give to Javier Milei for what he did at that event. In my view, the WEF is a collectivist organization that defends collectivism, and Javier Milei managed, while in Davos, to speak some reality about collectivism, and he also spoke the truth about capitalism that people do not want to hear. If you want to find out the criticism that he has on collectivism and the highlights that he spoke on capitalism, this video is for you. Now, without any further ado, let's get straight into the video of today. Now look at this. This is Elon Musk sharing the speech of Javier Milei, and it got 31.3 million views. This is really phenomenal. While Zelensky spoke as well in Davos and he got 17,000 views. These are the views on the actual channel for the WEF, the YouTube channel. Look at this. Javier Milei for 129,000 views by the time you're shooting this video. Javier Milei got more views than anybody else that spoke at the event.
Today I am present to inform you that the Western world is facing a significant threat. It is in danger because those who are supposed to defend the values of the Western world are co-opted by a worldview that inevitably leads to socialism and consequently to poverty and economic deprivation. Unfortunately, in recent decades, motivated by some well-intentioned desires to help others, and others by the desire to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We are here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world, but rather they are their cause. Trust me, there is no one better than us Argentines to provide testimony on these two issues.
I could not agree more with him. We also have made a series of presentations on Academy about Argentina and how Argentina got to the situation that they find themselves in. And yes, it is collectivism that brought Argentina to their knees. And unfortunately, in my view, the Western world are all going on that path. I agree with everything he says here. Let's look at what else he said at that event.
Now, when studying per capita GDP from 1800 to today, what is observed is that after the Industrial Revolution, global per capita GDP multiplied by more than 15 times, generating an explosion of wealth that lifted 90% of the world's population out of poverty. We must never forget that by the year 1800, about 95% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, while that number dropped to 5% by the year 2020, prior to the pandemic. The conclusion is obvious. Far from being the cause of our problems, free market capitalism as an economic system is the only tool we have to end hunger, poverty, and destitution throughout the planet. The empirical evidence is unquestionable.
I agree with him once again. And it's important to understand that he's talking about pure capitalism, not capitalism that has interference from the government, not government meddling with capitalism, but free market has always been the solution. And if you do not believe me, let's listen to what else he has to say, but also look at empirical evidence. When you see countries that has freedom, people live better. And he's going to mention this further in this video. Now look at the image that he's talking about. Look at the GDP over the last 2 millennia. And you can see that with the birth of capitalism, this thing went up. But not only that, the population also increased tremendously. And the thought was, with greater population, there will be more problems. And we have seen in the 70s another scientist claiming that an increase in population would destroy humanity. And we see that the increase of population within the capitalist regime is always better for the population. And we see in socialist regimes that the population increase, there is a problem, because socialism and collectivism world creates a world where the one who produces has the same advantages as the one who does not produce. That is not capitalism. The handouts, the help of the government, it is not a capitalist system. Let's listen more to Javier Milei.
Thanks to capitalism, the world is currently in its best moment. there has never been a moment in history with greater prosperity than the one we live in today. Today's world is freer, richer, more peaceful, and more prosperous than ever before. This is true for everyone, but particularly for those countries that are free, where they respect economic freedom and individual property rights. Because free countries are 12 times richer than repressed ones. Saying goes that in countries with freedom, people live better than 90% of population in repressed countries. It has 25 times fewer poor people in the standard format and 50 times fewer in the extreme format. And if that weren't enough, citizens of free countries live 25% longer than citizens of repressed countries.
And you can see here a graph created by the economic freedom of the world with information provided by the World Bank. And this graph shows the world divide in 4 quarters. And you can see the quarter of least free, the per capita is much lower than the one that most free. So freedom does pay off. Freedom is the solution for a lot of problems. To me, freedom is the ultimate goal and is the ultimate foundation that we need to be able to have a prosperous world. This graph alone shows that.
Now, in order to understand what we come to defend, it is important to define what we mean when we talk about libertarianism. To define it, I take up the words of the greatest proponent of the ideas of freedom in Argentina, Professor Alberto Venegas Lynch, who says that libertarianism is the unrestricted respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression, and in defense of the right to life, liberty, and property, whose fundamental institutions are private property, free markets without state intervention, free competition, division of labor, and social cooperation, where one can only be successful by serving others with goods of better quality at a better price. In other words, the capitalist, the successful entrepreneur, is a social benefactor who contributes to the well-being of society as a whole. In short, a successful entrepreneur is a hero.
Once again, I agree with him completely. Let's hear what else he has to say.
Given the resounding failure of collectivist models and the undeniable advances of the free world, socialists were forced to change their agenda. They left behind the class struggle based on the economic system to replace it with other supposed social conflicts equally harmful to community life and economic growth. The first of these new battles was the ridiculous and unnatural fight between man and woman. Libertarianism already establishes equality between sexes. The cornerstone of our creed states that all men are created equal, that we all have the same unalienable rights granted by the Creator, among which are life, liberty, and property. This radical feminism agenda has led to increased state intervention, hindering the economic process. It provides jobs to bureaucrats who haven't contributed anything to society, whether through women's ministries or international organizations promoting this agenda.
Now here he talks about something that doesn't seem to be related to economy, but it does, at least in my view. And I think I go a bit further. I honestly believe, and here I may get in trouble for my tongue and for the things that I say. If you don't like it, if you want to criticize me, go for it. There's no problem. I have the obligation to be sincere. I do agree with him. I honestly believe that the nuclear family is the building block of a strong society. And I honestly believe that in the West, where the family has been destroyed because of this agenda and this conflict between men and women, we're going to see the results. Remember, divide and conquer. I think this agenda goes further than just having men and women against each other. I believe the whole purpose of this agenda is to destroy the nuclear family, which to me is the basic building block of a strong nation.
Another conflict that socialists pose is that of humans against nature. They argue that humans cause harm to the planet and that it must be protected at all costs, even advocating for population control mechanisms or supporting the controversial agenda of abortion rights. Unfortunately, these harmful ideas have strongly permeated our society. Neo-Marxists have managed to co-opt the common sense of the Western world. They achieved this through the appropriation of the media, culture, universities, and yes, even international organizations.
Again, I do agree with him. And one thing that I think the social media has done and this whole agenda has done is kill freedom of speech. We need freedom of speech. There is no such thing as hate speech. All speech should be allowed. You cannot eliminate hate by just forbidding the speech. That hate is going to be manifested in another way. To me, all speech should be allowed. The only speech that I believe it should be forbidden is the speech that calls for violence. If I do call a group to go and act violent or assassinate another group, I would say we need to control that speech, or at least make sure it doesn't get heard or the violence does not occur. But as long as humans are talking, we need to be able to talk. We need to hear other people's opinion, and we need to develop a thicker skin to be able to hear somebody else's opinion. We need freedom of speech. Without freedom of speech, we're going to go back, in my view, to medieval times, and we're going to have even more conflict. We cannot destroy hate by forbidding people to speak. At least those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Let me know that on the comments below.
To many, it may sound ridiculous to suggest that the West has embraced socialism, but this view is only ridiculous if one limits themselves to the traditional economic definition of socialism, which states that it is an economic system where the state owns the means of production. In my opinion, this definition needs to be updated to reflect the current circumstances from my perspective. Today, states don't need to control means of production to control every aspect of individuals' lives. With tools such as monetary issuance, debt, subsidies, interest rate control, price controls, and regulations to correct alleged market failures, they can control the destinies of millions of human beings.
Again, a lot of truth on this. I'm really surprised that he's being able to speak that at the WEF meeting in Davos. I don't think he'll be invited for a second time.
This is how we have reached the point where, with different names or forms, good parts of the politically accepted offers in most Western countries are generally collectivist variants. Whether they openly declare themselves as communists, fascists, Nazis, socialists, social democrats, national socialists, Christian Democrats, Keynesians, neo-Keynesians, progressives, populists, nationalists, or globalists. In the end, there are no substantive differences. Everyone argues that the state should control all aspects of individuals' lives. All define a model contrary to the one that led humanity to the most spectacular progress in its history. We are here today to extend an invitation to the other Western countries to resume the path towards prosperity. Economic freedom, limited government, and unrestricted respect for private property are vital for economic growth.
And here's a point where I agree with him, but I want to clarify on how I agree with him. I believe the only difference between all forms of collectivism is how fast they get to the final destination. The final destination is literally the destruction of human lives, the destruction of productivity, civil war, as we have seen on the past century. Collectivism has been responsible for the deaths of 150 million people on the last century alone. Now the question is how far those forms of collectivism will get to that final station, the destruction of productivity, the destruction of human lives. All forms will get there, in my view. The only thing that changes is the speed. Now let's hear 2 or 3 more parts of what he said in Davos.
To summarize, I want to convey a message to all entrepreneurs present and those who are not, but are following us from around the globe, whether they're here or not physically. Don't be intimidated by the political caste or the parasites who live off the state. Don't yield to a political class that only wants to prolong its power and preserve its privileges. You are social benefactors. You are heroes. You are the creators of the most extraordinary era of prosperity we have ever experienced. Don't let anyone say ambition is immoral. If you earn money, it's because you provide a superior product, better price, contributing to well-being. Do not yield to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story, and know that from today you have Argentina as an unconditional ally. Muchísimas gracias y viva la libertad, carajo!
And this is the last footage that I want to share with you guys. Now, I also want to clarify what he said. He's not talking about entrepreneurs or people that use their influence and lobbyists to get the government to remove the competition from the marketplace. He's talking about people who are true capitalists, who believe that the ones with the better product should win the battle. And in that form of capitalism is the form of capitalism that I want to see and that I abide by. I am not here to get any influence or any favors from anyone to put my product as the better one. I think we all should compete and see who offers the best product and who makes the most money. This is the world I want to live in. I don't know about you. Let me know the world you want to live in on the comments below. This is it for now. Please like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and above it all, share this video with someone else who can benefit from this. See you guys in the next video.
Muchísimas gracias y viva la libertad, carajo.